I'm Randy White.
I'm Connor Rives.
And this is the I-FormNation podcast.
Today, we're going to be talking about the excitement that's gone on during this offseason with Russell Wilson, Khalil, Mack, Carson Wentz. Then we're going to jump into some Hall of Fame snubs, who we think the biggest snubs are, and just talk about it. Then after that, we're going to talk about the greatest defender of all time, given the recent talk with Aaron Donald and where he sits. And last, we're going to do some start bench cut topics.
Awesome. So let's start with the awesome offseason we've had, especially the last 3 days. So first bombshell, Aaron Rodgers stays with Green Bay. The report is that he signs a 4-year, $200 million contract with $153 million guaranteed. However, Aaron Rodgers and Pat McAfee have both said that is false. I had a lisp there for a second. Rodgers tweeted that he has not signed a contract and that the details of said contract are false. But you never know. I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers fan, but you never know. He's very particular with the way he words things. So is that falsehood simply, well, it's actually a $195 million contract, or could we be seeing a genuine, huge difference in what was actually reported, where you see a more cap-friendly contract that allows Green Bay to bring guys like Russel, Douglas, Preston Smith, Za'Darius Smith, Devondre Campbell, bringing guys like them back, or is it going to be big money? I would think it's likely going to be a cap-friendly deal. That's what I would lean towards the likelihood. And then you want to cover Russell Wilson?
Yeah, so just touching on the Aaron Rodgers thing really quick. So, I mean, obviously it's, I think a lot of people just closer to when it happened expected the Packers to get him back. I don't think a lot of people thought he was going to be leaving. But yeah, so that's pretty, I mean, you nailed it. I think it'll definitely be more cap friendly. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to win another one, and it wouldn't make sense for him to take a deal that large. So yeah, we'll jump into Russell Wilson. And, this one is bittersweet because I'm so happy for Russell Wilson as a Russell Wilson fan, that he is going to be with a good team, with a good offensive line, and, a team that's actually going to care about his well-being instead of not building a team around him like Seattle. And so that's really nice. And I think he's going to do a good job in Denver. I think people are kind of getting a little too excited thinking that he's going to be back to like rookie Russ form, but got to keep in mind, he is still old and he's not going to be as good as he was. He's still going to be really good. They're still going to have a really good team. They're still going to be a playoff team. They're still going to compete. And then the rough side is, as a Raiders fan, having Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Russell Wilson as the quarterbacks you're going to be seeing twice a year. That's terrifying. That's a lot. That's a lot to be put on a defensive coordinator's plate. And we did get a really good DC this offseason. We got the Giants defensive coordinator, but I don't know what we're going to do with that. But Russell Wilson, I think it's a really good fit in Denver. They got a really good team built there. And really the only thing they've been missing is a quarterback, and now they've got that.
Absolutely. The one thing I disagree with you on is I don't think that – oh, shoot. I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, a point I would like to make, though, is that Denver is only going to keep getting better. I remember. Okay, so I disagree with you about Russell Wilson being old and not going to be like he used to be. Russell Wilson is only 33 years old. So he's right on the edge of still potential prime play. Just 2 seasons ago, he led his team to a 12-4 record where he was on pace to shatter records in the passing game. Now, obviously he slowed down as the season went on, but Russell Wilson still has the capabilities of playing at an elite level. He obviously had a bad year this year, but even in that bad year, he threw 25 touchdown passes. I think it was 25 or more touchdown passes, I believe he threw. And I think you put him behind a team with a better offensive line. Now, no disrespect to Rashad Penny, but Javonte Williams is a different level. Rashad Penny played great at the end of the season, but Javonte Williams is just a different type of dude. He's an absolute menace inside, outside, breaking tackles, making huge plays. he could be one of the best running backs in the league this year. And with Russell Wilson to take some pressure off of Javonte Williams, I think they can really help each other out. And that now it's not a run dominant offense. It's a whatever they need the offense to be dominant. You need to pass, we'll pass. You need to run, we'll run. And as far as the defense goes, it's very likely Von Miller comes back. He's tweeted about wanting to come back. I don't see why Denver wouldn't take him back. So it's only up from here for Denver, and they've already made great strides this offseason.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. I'm not saying Russell Wilson is going to be like a bad quarterback or anything. I'm just saying people have these expectations that he's going to be back in the top 5 in the league, back in the top 3, not like this crazy, he's got a good team around him and he's going to do well, but people are pretending that Denver is this giant upgrade overall. And it's just not true. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson when he's healthy, Rashad Penny had a good year. That was still a decent team around Russell Wilson besides the O-line. So, no, Russell Wilson's still going to be a fantastic quarterback. I think he's probably a top 10 quarterback next season. I think he's going to have a good year. But, yeah, let's go ahead and move on. We'll talk about – I'll have you start on the Carson Wentz trade.
It's an interesting trade. I don't know how – I feel like Washington could have given up less. 2 third-round picks and you're paying his entire salary. I got some questions. Now, yes, Carson Wentz is better than Taylor Heineke. And yes, Carson Wentz is better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. And if if Carson Wentz can kind of fix his what seems to be poor leadership from what we're hearing around the league, that he wasn't the guy they wanted him to be off the field. If he can fix that, which is not something I think most players do, usually you're just kind of who you are at this point. Most of these guys, when they get paid, it's just really who they are is who they are, and they're not willing to change because they got the money or whatever the reason is. So it's interesting to see what Carson Wentz does. He wasn't the leader the Colts wanted, and that's ultimately why they got rid of him, because right now the Colts are in a position where they're not going to get someone who's necessarily significantly better than Carson Wentz on the field. Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy. Now, if they do somehow trade for Deshaun Watson, I know his criminal charges got dropped today, which is huge, but there's no way the Texans are trading Deshaun Watson in division. It's not happening. The Colts are not going to get Deshaun Watson. So that's out the window. Your best quarterback options right now are stick with Carson Wentz, go with Jimmy Garoppolo, or roll the dice on Jameis Winston, who honestly, I'd probably like Jameis Winston more, but who knows? Like, it's a lot of uncertainty right now with Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers on their teams, and Deshaun Watson, 0% chance. I'm going to say it right here, 0% chance he goes to Indianapolis. It's not happening. So I don't know. It's a good way to free up cap space. So if you can get Jimmy Garoppolo for cheaper, it's a good move because you got 2 third-round picks and you get a cheaper quarterback. But other than that, seems like the Colts are in the same place they were.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. So the Colts actually got a second-round pick for this year, a third-round pick for this year, as well as a third-round pick for next year that is a conditional pick that could be a second-round pick if Carson Wentz takes 70% of snaps in Washington. So that's why I think this is a crazy trade. I don't get it for Washington. I understand Russell Wilson on the move to Denver, Aaron Rodgers not leaving. Why would you make all this noise that you're going to go get this elite quarterback that's going to change your organization and then trade for Carson Wentz? It's just weird to me. And you said he's better than Taylor Heineke. Yeah, I agree, because he's got more experience. I think you give Heineke the experience Wentz has, Heineke would be a better quarterback right now. And
the other thing is his explosiveness, his arm strength. He's just a bigger, stronger guy. And that's a big deal in the from the quarterback position. So that's the other thing is his physical his physical attributes are significantly better than Taylor Heineke's outside of mobility.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and move on to Khalil Mack. We've taken a lot of time on this, so we'll move on to Khalil Mack. So obviously the Chargers trading 2022 second round pick and a 2023 sixth round pick for Khalil Mack. And I'll be the first to say it. The Bears got scammed. I get it. Khalil Mack is a big cap hit. They're trying to rebuild, and he's 30 years old. This is still one of the best pass rushers in the league. And you're going to trade, let's just ignore the sixth round pick. You're going to trade a second round pick for one of the best pass rushers in the league. This guy is still a superstar. And yes, he had a rough year last year, but he is still a tremendous guy. And you pair him with Joey Bosa on the Chargers, that is going to be a nasty, nasty pass rush. And again, as a Raiders fan, I am so depressed about it because it's so difficult seeing not only a former Raider that everybody loved, but now we're going to see him 2 times a year with our pathetic offensive line.
Yeah, the thing with Khalil Mack is not the guy he used to be, and he's not the dominant force where it's like, oh, he's one of the top 3 defensive players in the league. That's not in the conversation anymore. But if you pair him with Joey Bosa on the opposite end and Joey Bosa stays healthy, good luck. I don't understand. How do you block that? How do you block that? The answer is you don't. You don't block that. It's over. There's no way. I mean, you'd have to block 6 guys pretty much every play. The limitations that having Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on the same front, the limitations that places on offense is huge. So this is a great move for the Chargers. And as far as the Bears go, I get it. They want to get picks to build, and they want to get picks. Now, they didn't get very significant ones, and that's why they kind of got fleeced. The 2nd and the 6th round, you can get a guy with a 2nd round pick, potentially, maybe. 6th round pick, it's not likely. Obviously, you still could, but it's not likely. So this is a huge, huge trade for the Chargers. Chargers win this trade. And as a Packers fan, I'm excited because that's one less guy that can tackle Rodgers now that he's back. So the Bears got scammed, and we're not the first to say it. It's been the internet the last day and a half has been Bears got fleeced.
True. All right, so I think it's time to move on to the Hall of Fame snubs now. I'm just going to start off since obviously we both have some very strong opinions about a certain player, but I'm going to start off with some other guys. So Andre Johnson is my biggest snub personally. I'm definitely biased. I'm a huge Andre Johnson fan. He was my favorite receiver growing up. Just watching this guy tear all these balls out of the air away from defenders, and he was just so physical, so fun to watch. 11th all time in receiving yards, 11th all time in catches, and 48th all time in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. Which I think the explanation for that number being so low is just his poor quarterback play. I mean, he had David Carr and Matt Schaub as his quarterbacks, which is just pathetic, but he was still able to dominate the league and be one of the best receivers in the league every year that he was playing with that poor quarterback play. And, obviously part of a expansion team in the Texans, and it wasn't a good team, but he still made them competitive in games that they shouldn't have been because he was just so electric. And then the kind of unanimous, what the hell happened was DeMarcus Ware. Nobody understands why he didn't make it. If anybody plays Madden, if you do a franchise mode and you go to next season, they have this little Hall of Fame thing where it gives your players a boost at that position, and they have DeMarcus Ware in that spot because it should have been a no-brainer. Why isn't DeMarcus Ware a first ballot? It's nonsense. 13th all-time sacks, 15th all-time forced fumbles, and he's tied for 4th all-time in tackles for loss. Now, they've only been recording that since 2000, but still, those are crazy numbers for a guy to miss being a first ballot. He was one of the most dominant pass rushers in this era, and it's just incredible he didn't make it.
I absolutely agree with DeMarcus Ware. DeMarcus Ware should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. My big guy, and this is a very popular opinion, you disagree with me, Devin Hester is the greatest return man in the history of the NFL. No one has ever been better than him. So when you have someone who is literally the GOAT at what he does, which I know he says wide receiver on the depth chart, Connor. I know you're going to say that. It says wide receiver on the depth chart. His impact and the reason teams wanted him was because he was the best return man in the NFL, and he's the best return man of all time. Teams were so terrified of him that they didn't even kick it to him. They said, nah, we'd rather it just go shorter and go out of bounds, or we're going to kick it to someone else. Devin Hester is not touching this football on this return as long as we can help it. So when you got someone who's that dangerous, the teams are terrified to return because they're like, well, if he catches the ball, the other team's the Bears or whatever other team he played for, they're going to have the ball at the 40-yard line. in plus territory. When you're that scared of someone, I think that's a Hall of Famer, someone who's the best ever at what they did.
Look, I want to make something clear. People have this misconception that I am completely anti-Hester Hall of Fame. That is not true. I think Devin Hester is definitely an eventual Hall of Famer. My issue was with him potentially being first ballot. Now, like you said, he is a wide receiver first, period. He was drafted as a wide receiver. That is his position. He's a return man sometimes, but the amount of snaps that he took at wide receiver outweigh the snaps he took as a returner. He is obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of people were afraid to kick to him. But you want to talk about some numbers on that. Devin Hester's yards per return his entire career for kick returns was 24.9 yards. Brian Mitchell, who is argued as the greatest returner ever, which I would say he is, has the most yardage by a long shot. His average was 23.1. Now, you want to put it in perspective, the amount of kicks that come to you that are bad kicks in a bad spot, you have to run for it. The blocking is bad. You cannot pin that little of a margin on pure talent. Now, Devin Hester is a fantastic returner. He was electric. He was a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, 20 touchdowns, the most out of any returner ever. But at the end of the day, the excuse that he didn't get kicked to a lot doesn't outweigh the fact that his yardage is not that much greater than the others that are right under him. So Devin Hester is definitely the greatest returner ever. I'm going to say that right now. But just because you're the greatest returner ever does not mean you should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's not a primary position.
Disagree. If you're the best ever or something, you should be first ballot. But it also depends on the class you come in on. And there were a lot of guys that got in that were deserving of getting in who had to wait a long time, and they finally made it in. So,
yeah, and there was also a lot of guys this year that didn't get in that definitely should have, because there was just so many that were up for it this year. I mean, you obviously, if we just go through and name some of them, you got Reggie Wayne, you got Steve Smith. I mean, there was a lot. There was a lot of people who should have made it, and people are going to argue for all of them. I've seen it all over the internet. People have argued for every single one of the people who didn't make it, because
there's an argument for every single one of them.
There sure is. I mean, Reggie Wayne, he's 10th all-time catches, 10th all-time receiving yards. Like, yes, he had Peyton Manning, but that doesn't change the fact that he was still one of the best receivers in the league every year he played. Like, he was really good. And Steve Smith, I believe he has more touchdowns than both of them in his career. And I believe he has more yards than both of them as well. So from a pure statistical standpoint, those three guys should have been first ballot. The three of them are three of probably the top 10 receivers of all time. I would put them in that category. They all were so dominant in their era, and it's still a debate who was the greatest during their era.
You want to move on to the Hall of Famers? I mean, greatest defense player of all time.
Yeah, so I just want to do a little intro on this part. So obviously, after the Super Bowl, a lot of people were talking about with Aaron Donald potentially retiring, where does he sit all time? A lot of little kids, that don't know any better, were saying he's the greatest defender ever. And I just want to take this time to say, watch some damn football before 2000, because there were so many defenders in a much different time of football that played so much better. And obviously, Lawrence Taylor is the greatest defender of all time. And the only way anybody is ever going to pass him is if they can beat his award numbers. MVP in 1986, he's 8-time first team All-Pro. He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in 1981. In the same year, he won both awards. 6-time Defensive Player of the Year, second most sacks by a linebacker, and 9th most overall out of everybody. So there's nobody better just ever. There's been nobody better on the defensive side of the ball that's ever played the game.
Yeah, I agree. Lawrence Taylor, the MVP is what puts him over the top. I think if Lawrence Taylor doesn't have that MVP, he's probably second behind Reggie White or third behind Reggie and Bruce Smith. But that MVP, and I say that maybe he might still be, it's more debatable though if he doesn't have that MVP. It's more open for debate. With that MVP, he's the last defensive player to win an MVP. There's no argument. There's just none. He's the greatest of all. He's the greatest defensive player of all time. And if you want to say Aaron Donald is, you're just wrong. He's the greatest of this era by far, and he's probably a top 5 defensive player of all time. At the worst, top 10. But he's absolutely a generational defensive player, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. But he's not the greatest of all time. I'd put Lawrence Taylor, I'd put Reggie White and Bruce Smith ahead of him. And you could argue, I believe Charles Haley is the defensive player who has 5 Super Bowl rings, playing for the Cowboys and 49ers. You could make an argument for him, although I don't think it's a super strong argument. I think you'd have to give Aaron Donald the nod over him. Aaron Donald's top 5, but there's just, it's important to remember that there's a lot of amazing players that came before these guys, and it's okay to say that they were actually better. Like, it's not just because, oh, he's the new one, so he's the best. It's not how that works. Lawrence Taylor still has the crown.
Yeah, we live in a football society of a lot of casual fans that live in the moment too much. I mean, we see it every year with rookie receivers, how people are ranking them so high. Like Justin Jefferson, his rookie year, people were talking about him in the top 3. He just wasn't the top 3 receiver by then. He hasn't played.
He might be now.
He's played 1 year. I would say he is now, but the same thing's happening with Jamar Chase, and you cannot be. I mean, let's also remember Aaron Donald has not played that long. I mean, he's not that old. He's only been in the league, 7-8 years. He hasn't been in the league.
Maybe not. Yeah, 7 or 8. You're right, 7 or 8. He hasn't played 9.
I mean, he hasn't been in the league for that long. So if he continues to put up the numbers that he has been and continues to be a dominant force, I would put him in the top 5. But at the moment, there are just so many great defenders over the course of time that, even at their different positions, we're still able to make an equal amount of impact in their era for a longer amount of time. And one person you didn't mention, Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott was an absolute fiend. That guy just, there's no other way to say it. He killed people on that field. He put people to sleep. That guy could hit. That guy was incredible in coverage. That guy cut off part of his finger to keep playing. He's a monster. That guy is top 5. Period.
And then you got other guys you got to consider, like Deion Sanders, Darrelle Revis. And if you want to go way back into the barrel, Night Train Lane, who was the most dominant corner of his era, still holds the record for interceptions in a single season. In his rookie year, he had 14, I believe. 14. He was a different level. Obviously, his tactics of tackling would probably warrant being kicked out of the league now. But still, I mean, that guy, if you watch his highlights, he is fun to watch. And he was quite the football player in his day. So there's a lot of guys from a lot of different eras that you have to take into consideration. Like you said, Ronnie Lott, and then Deion Sanders, who's one of the greatest corners ever, if not the greatest. There's certainly strong debate for that. So there's a lot of guys you can put there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I find it difficult because these are great conversations to have, and it's a great topic to talk about greatest at certain positions. But it's really difficult to make those comparisons when it comes to the different generations. I mean, I would say, like, for the quarterback conversation, Tom Brady is the greatest because he still played in an era where he could get absolute killed. I mean, it's not quite as much as Joe Montana, but he still took hits. So,
I mean, you've seen that play where he slides and gets clocked and his helmet flies off.
Yeah, and obviously today that guy's getting suspended for a year. I mean, that's how the rules are now, and it's ridiculous. But I mean, player safety is coming above all, and so yeah, sometimes these topics are a little hard to discuss, especially when you are talking to people that watched football, grew up watching different people. But at the end of the day, the casual fan needs to realize that just because something just happened doesn't mean that it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to move on to start, bench, cut. I compiled 5 different, topics for us to discuss. The first one is related to our topic earlier. It is Hall of Fame snubs, receivers. It is Andre Johnson, Reggie Wayne, Steve Smith. Start, bench, cut.
That is a very good one. I think I have to start. I think I have to start Andre Johnson. And then I think I'm benching Reggie Wayne. And I think I have to cut Steve Smith.
Yeah. And I would agree. I think I think Andre Johnson should be the number 1 for anybody. I think there's an argument for Steve Smith over Reggie, simply because obviously Reggie did have Peyton Manning, and Steve Smith's quarterback play over his career was a little inconsistent. And I always tip the cap to anybody who dominated despite having a bad team and despite having a bad quarterback as a receiver. So I always find that impressive. That's something that I take into consideration when talking about some of the best receivers. But yeah, I would agree with your order. I'd say Andre Johnson, start, bench Reggie, and then cut Steve Smith. So the next one, this one hits close to heart, and it's going to hit you close to heart too. It is the running backs that we watched growing up. It's going to be Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson, LaShawn McCoy.
Well, I'm starting Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson is one of the greats. I don't think it's debatable. I think you have to start Adrian Peterson. Wait, well, is this prime Adrian Peterson?
We're just talking about the players, man.
I'm starting Adrian Peterson. I'm Shady was really, really good for like 5 years, if that. 4 years maybe. He didn't have I feel like the longevity of Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson outweighs Shady. So I'm going to do Frank Gore. I'm going to bench Frank Gore. I'm going to cut Shady.
Yeah, and actually, unpopular opinion, I am starting Frank Gore. Just the fact that the guy was so dominant for so long, and Adrian Peterson had his fall off. While it was later than most running backs, he still had his fall off, and Frank Gore still continued after him to still be a really good running back. And yes, the argument for Frank Gore is that he was never a top 3 running back in the league, but he was consistent, and he was consistently one of the best. He was consistently top 5 in the league for 8 to 10 years. He had an absolutely tremendous tenure with the 49ers. And then when he went to the Colts, he still played very well. And even in Miami, when he was given the opportunity, still ran the ball pretty well, even at his age. So I think it's definitely an argument. It could go either way. I love Adrian Peterson as a player. So I'm going to have to start Frank Gore, bench Adrian Peterson, and cut LaShawn McCoy. Shady, so much fun to watch. Just watching that guy in the snow. You want to talk about greatest running back in the snow ever? Definitely him. But yeah, like you said, he wasn't as dominant for as long. And that's really what.
Yeah, if you said snow games, it's completely different. If you said snow games, Shady gets to start without hesitation.
Yeah, if it's snow, it's Shady, Gore, Peterson. Because Gore was really good in the snow as well, because he was just really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The next one is a little bit different than what you're used to with these start bench cuts, but I thought it was a really interesting topic. So 2007 Patriots, who were 16-0 and lost the Super Bowl. And we're talking about the season, not the team, the season.
Okay.
1972 Dolphins, who were 14-0 and won their Super Bowl. And the 1985 Bears, who were 15-1 and won their Super Bowl despite a pretty pathetic offense.
Well, the Patriots, even if you go 16-0, or what, 18-0 through the first 18 weeks, and then you lose the Super Bowl, you're getting cut because these other two teams had amazing years and they won the Super Bowl. So Patriots are cut. And the 72 Dolphins were perfect. So they're starting. So the Bears are getting benched here.
Yeah, and I would agree. And if we want to talk about the teams, it's a different story. But 100%, yeah, that Dolphin season just perfect. Obviously, Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Just, I mean, it's incredible that even happens. And yes, 14 games instead of 16 or 17, but still absolutely incredible. And in a time where it was a heavily defensive league, that they were still able to dominate against most teams that they played. And then, yeah, the Bears, they did not go undefeated. However,
and by the way, the Bears' loss was to the Dolphins with Dan Marino.
There you go. So the Bears obviously not undefeated, but that defense was just, I mean, it was enough to absolutely carry this team. I mean, they did not need a good offense. They had the greatest defense ever. It didn't matter what happened on offense. As long as they put up some sort of points, they were winning games. So, yeah, playing against Dan Marino is going to find a way to win, and that's why he did, because Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But, yeah, I would agree with you. That has to be the order because Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl. Eli Manning got in the way. All right, so the next one, this is in light of our new trade that we just had with Russell Wilson. So we have AFC West quarterbacks, leaving out Carr because who cares about Derek Carr now, right? But
poor guy.
Yeah, man. So Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, Wilson, start, bench, cut.
I'm gonna start Mahomes. I'm gonna bench Herbert. I'm gonna cut Wilson.
See, the way you can look at this is two ways. You can look at it as I'm going, like, who's my quarterback that I'm going to have as a franchise, or who's the quarterback I want right now. So I'm starting Mahomes no matter what, period. But I'm going to bench Wilson simply because of that, simple X factor that he's got where he can throw better out of the pocket than he can in the pocket. And it's just such an incredible thing to watch. And I think right now he's still a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert will be better in a year or two, but I think right now Russell Wilson is still better. So I'd cut Herbert.
Interesting.
And then the final one, we mentioned Dan Marino earlier. Talk about some quarterbacks that were before our time, that are some of the all-time greats. You have Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, and Brett Favre.
I'm a Packers fan. This is difficult. I'm going to start Dan Marino. I'm going to bench Brett Favre, and I'm cutting Jim Kelly.
See, I have a hard time not starting Jim Kelly.
4 Super Bowl appearances,
team
really
to
tough.
4 Super Bowls in a row. That is something
never been done.
That is incredible. That wasn't a mistake. Some quarterbacks can stumble into the Super Bowl and just,
4 times in a row.
4 times in a row. And yes, he didn't win any, but that honestly to me comes down to coaching. That's what that comes down to. And one of them that they lost was because their field goal
missed field goal
at the end of the game. They missed. That's devastating. So
he hadn't missed a field goal all year, I don't think. Dan
Marino's the better quarterback in terms of talent. But if you want to talk about their career, I would say Jim Kelly. But I'm going to take this as in terms of the quarterback themselves, and I'm going to say Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, Brett Favre. Brett Favre's interceptions are just too much for me. The amount of interceptions that guy threw is wild. He threw more interceptions in his career. He threw more interceptions in his career than George Blanda, who was a Raiders quarterback, who was actually a kicker who came in at quarterback. So, you know what? Brett Favre's interceptions are the only thing that really hold him back from being considered one of the absolute all-time greats.
Yeah, I think Brett Favre's interceptions hold him out of the top 5, and you can argue they hold him out of the top 10. Now, a lot of people still put him in the top 10, and he deserves to be considered in the top 10. But if he had 100 less picks, heck, if he had 50 less picks, he's undisputably top 10. But he just threw so many interceptions. And it's not only that, but it's interceptions at the worst moments. You know, his last throw as a Packer is an interception against the Giants that sends the Giants to the Super Bowl in an NFC Championship game. His last throw, no, I'm sorry, not his last throw, but his last throw of his best season of his career in Minnesota, his second year in Minnesota, he had arguably the best year of his career, and he ends it by throwing an interception to Tracy Porter over the middle of the field, and the Saints win in overtime in an NFC Championship again. So he's thrown 2 game-losing picks in NFC Championships. He had a playoff game against the Eagles where he threw 6. So those don't count into his stats, but it's catastrophic mistakes in the biggest points in the season that really changes it.
Yeah, and I think Brett Favre is a top 10 talent easily. He was the definition of, F it, my receiver's down there somewhere. I mean, that was him. There was nobody that fit that bill more than him. That's what he was. He was a gunslinger. He was the original big time gunslinger that didn't care if it shouldn't been, if you shouldn't throw it. He was going to throw it because there's a chance it's completed. And my favorite Brett Favre fact is that his first career completion is to himself for a loss, which is a really funny video. I encourage everyone to go find that online. The defensive lineman tips it up, and Brett Favre is like, "Oh, I'll catch it," and it comes down with it, loses yardage. It's just a really funny fact for Brett Favre that I don't think anybody else can say.
My favorite sequence of plays, and here's something that truly no one else can say, is this man threw an interception, then forced the fumble on the guy who – wait, did he force the fumble? Yeah, he forced the fumble on the guy who picked it. The Packers recover, and then the very next play, he throws a pick 6. So, that is the best sequence of plays, or the worst sequence of plays I've ever seen or ever even heard of. I don't think there's a single person that can say, yeah, I threw a pick, then I forced a fumble on the guy that picked me off, and then it gets better. I threw a pick 6 on the next play. Like, that's special. That's Brett Favre for you. Brett Favre he had the highs, he had the highest of the highs, and he had the lowest of the lows. And that's what made him so exciting and so fun.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick real shout out to Jim Kelly. I feel like in a lot of conversations he is overlooked.
Yes.
But let's just talk about the fact that he led a team to 4 straight Super Bowls. He was a good quarterback. He was fantastic. He made the clutch throws when they were absolutely necessary. It's not like he had the greatest team ever around him either. I mean, he had Andre Reed, I believe, later in his career. But other than that, he didn't.
Hall of Fame running back, Thurman Thomas.
Yes, correct. But in terms of receivers overall, he didn't really have anything that special. Especially, I don't believe Andre Reed was on the first 2 Super Bowl appearances. I could be mistaken, but I know he came later in Jim Kelly's career. So, I mean, Jim Kelly doesn't get enough respect, and I think people don't understand that Jim Kelly should be considered a top 10 quarterback all time. 4 straight Super Bowls is something incredible. It is hard for teams to get to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, let alone 4. That is something incredible. And while not all the credit belongs with the quarterback, a lot of it belongs with the quarterback, because that's the leader of your offense. So shout out Jim Kelly. He's overlooked way too often.
And unfortunately for Jim Kelly, 3/4 of the NFC East got to take a crack at him in the Super Bowl. His first losses to the Giants, where they lose by 1 point due to the kick that went wide right. And then they get their heads beaten by the Redskins the next year. And then they play a forming dynasty, a rising dynasty in the Cowboys, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, and a just suffocating defense in Dallas. And the Dallas Cowboys were the best team in the league for those 2 years, and the Bills had to play them. And I mean, it was whoever won those NFC championships was winning the Super Bowl when you had the Cowboys and the 49ers battling it out. It was the winner of that game won the Super Bowl. You saw Cowboys, and then the 49ers, and then the Cowboys again. So really, really tough competition, and just flat out better teams. They had their chance against the Giants, and that was Bill Belichick's that'd be Bill Belichick's second Super Bowl win, I think, or first, as the defensive coordinator behind Bill Parcells, with Lawrence Taylor and that legendary Giants defense. So Jim Kelly had some tough defenses that he had to put points up against, and they didn't get it done. Is that it? We good?
Yeah, I think that's all we've got.
Well, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to try to keep up with us. Our Instagram is I-FormNation. Go check us out there. Follow us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, I-FormNation, as well. And if you want to listen to us on Spotify, if you've got a car ride or some other kind of thing you want to do, you just want to relax, listen to some good sports talk, go to Spotify and type in I-FormNation. You'll find us there as well. So 3 platforms to listen to us on. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.